Are you guys ready? It's been a while since I've spoken, so I'm kind of fired up. Hopefully you're ready. This is a very special weekend in many ways, and a few people have mentioned them. Of course, it's Tracy and Shane's 7-year anniversary this weekend, so that's awesome. And of course, Victor shared about the anniversary of the church. 6 years. We were all younger then. Yeah, 6 years ago, amazing things have happened. I'm sure he's going to share about all of that in a few weeks. And then, of course, Maritza was baptized on that day. She actually quit her job at the Mayo Clinic to come here to be a part of the church. Yeah, that was awesome and amazing. Now, a lot of things have happened to Maritza since then. Yeah, she found a guy, and she got married, and then 2 children. So God has certainly blessed you. You know, and then of course, what did you say? It's the Mexican Independence Day. Not a lot of Mexicans in the crowd, I guess. All right. You know, the church here, believe it or not, is looked at as an example church. And we started with 21. We grew to in the 70s, but then we sent out 24 people. I don't know if you know that. And I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, you know, we actually have a number of those leaders lead churches. And I counted, and there's six different people who are leading churches that were sent out from here. And of course, Barb and I are leaving in 2 days. So, of course, we're going to be sent out too then, right? So that's 8. That's pretty amazing. Of course, a lot of people don't know this, that we are a pillar church for the Russian churches. And that's a big deal. There's a lot of land there. And then, of course, we are also the pillar church for the Caucasus and for the stands, like Uzbekistan and Tajikistan and all those stands. So how did that happen? Well, it's because of the title today. You're going to find out how did that happen. All right? And what we do is we go back to the basics, foundational things that are in the Bible that make a solid foundation, that if you continue to do it, amazing things happen. And so the title of the lesson is A People of Integrity. Well, what does that mean? What's the word integrity? Well, it actually has 2 definitions. First, adherence to moral and ethical principles, soundness of moral character, honesty. And the other is a solid, unimpaired, or perfect condition. And they use the example like the hull of a boat. They call it the integrity of a boat. That how much can it take? Waves pounding it and all that. They call that the integrity. And it's kind of like how much can a person take will dictate what they do. And do they continue on a right path in life and hold to it? And so we're going to talk a lot about that. It's basically having a strong moral character. Now, Jesus was accused of this. Look in Matthew chapter 22. Matthew 22. Matthew is the first book of the New Testament. There you go. Starting in verse 15. It says, the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. That's not good. That's the religious leaders, okay? They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. Teacher, they said, we know you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Okay, so they define Jesus as a man of integrity. And then they tell us why, because he doesn't care what people think. He basically calls people to the scriptures, to the truth. And really, as disciples, that's supposed to be us. It's obvious, should be obvious, that if we claim Christianity, then we act like Jesus. That's where Christian comes from, okay? And that means we're different than the world in a good way, okay? We're different. And a lot of times we go against the grain and people don't like it. And as you can see here, they were trying to trap Jesus. And in fact, he ends up being killed because of his integrity to the word. People aren't going to like what we stand for. That's been true with Christianity throughout centuries, many martyrs as a result. Now, in our world, we're kind of trained to lie. I don't know if you guys know that, but everybody kind of has an angle, and it gets to the point where you don't know what's true anymore. And I remember as a little kid telling the truth, and my friends are like, "What are you doing? Are you an idiot? Wow, I guess I should lie." Have you guys faced that? And then I learned and perfected the form of deceit. And it was hard because, you try to act not guilty when you are. Who broke that window? Who did that? I don't know. That's a bit bad. Or we kind of rationalize things. Oh, was that wrong? I didn't know that. I shouldn't have done that. We rationalize our sin. We blame others. We excuse things away. And we live different lives. There's different forms of deceit, exaggeration, making things sound better than they are, versus living a life of truth. You guys ever seen the movie Liar, Liar? Jim Carrey? Hilarious movie, but very convicting. His son and his birthday wish is I wish that my dad wouldn't lie just for a day. And it comes true. And he goes through all these horrendous things, which shouldn't be, but it exposes our hearts. Recently, I heard of a new term. It's called girl math. Have you guys ever heard of that? My daughter Candace alerted me to this, and I looked it up, and it says it's a trend, describes how young women, justify or rationalize their spending habits. Okay, so I wrote a few of these things down, see if you can relate. Okay, point number one, anything under $5 is free. Oh, it's only $4. What's that? If you buy a purse that's $300 and you use it 20 times, then it's really only $15 a wear. Okay, 15. If you wear it 50 times, then that's like $6 a wear. Any more than that, it's under $5, it's free. It's a free purse. Girl math. If there's an item on sale for $50 from $90, technically you have just made $40. You've made $40. Sounds like a great deal. I'm making money. The wives come to their husbands, look how much money I saved you. If I preload my Starbucks account with $25 and I go to Starbucks the following week, my order basically is free because I'd already purchased it before. Anything bought in advance is free. If you pay with cash, it's free because your bank account doesn't get affected. If you return an item, and let's say you get $100 back, anything you purchase out of that $100 is free. All right, you guys starting to relate with this? This is how we could deceive ourselves as a society. All right. To be people of integrity means you say no to all that. That's not true. And then you get conflict. People of integrity must be a people of strong moral character. Well, how do you do that? Point number one, you accept the truth. There's a truth in everything. In this passage, the Pharisees said of Jesus that Jesus taught things in accordance with the truth. And really, there's a truth about everything in life. Truth about how was the sun made? How does our body work? Is there a God? Is there heaven? Is there hell? How do I get saved? Am I a Christian? There is a truth about everything. And it all depends on where you go to find the truth and what you'll accept as truth. If you go to society, you got a ton of different opinions. It's very confusing. You can go to your parents. You can go to your teachers. You can go to the Quran. You can go to the Bible. But you've got to make a decision. What is going to be the truth? And the question is that thing really the truth? Now, one of the things that I've done in the 80s, I went to school in Moscow. And also in the 80s, I went to school in Malaysia. And I was very taken back when I studied out their history because it was very different than what I had been taught. And if you look at what happened in World War II, their perspective is radically different than what I understood it to be. It's the same thing with Malaysia and Singapore. It was very different. And you begin to wonder what really happened. And you get a lot of opinions. And they say that the winners will always dictate what happened. Winston Churchill once said, "History will be good to me because I will write it." Let's look in John 18. You guys getting this? Well, Jesus was confronted by Pilate. Now, of course, this is just before he's getting crucified. John 18, verse 33. Pilate is the governor, and he's kind of the judge. He's got to make the decision whether Jesus dies or not. In verse 33, Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Now, that was important to know, because it was against Roman law for any other kings to exist. If you were a king or tried to be king, they would kill you. This is what Jesus says. "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" Meaning, is that their opinion? What did they say? "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You are right in saying I'm a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is truth?" Pilate asked. So you realize that Pilate is the judge here. And that's what judges do. They bring people together to find out what's the truth, and then they make a decision based on what they know. And Pilate's saying, "Hey, are you a king?" That's what they're accusing you of. He says, "Yeah, I'm a king, but not of this world." Oh, great. What do you do with that thing? But in essence, that's why they could kill him. There was a sign put above Jesus' head, "King of the Jews." And he comes to Jesus and he confronts him on certain things. And Jesus says, "Hey, for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth." Why? Because it is such a rare thing. And people are walking around in darkness because they just don't know what is the truth. And he says, everyone on the side of truth listens to me. Now, he's making a pretty bold statement. I got the truth. You imagine walking around with your Bible. "I got the truth, everybody." People, yeah, Right. And Pilate says very sarcastically, what is truth? And I think that's how people are today. They don't know. They don't know. Have you ever been lied to or scammed or anything like that? Makes you want to just trust everybody, doesn't it? You know, this weekend, one of my daughters, her car broke down. And, of course, she started texting me, is this true? Is this? And then she was asking, is this a good price, this and that? Why? Because it's so hard to trust. You want to get a hold of someone that you feel will tell you the truth. Otherwise, you feel like you got ripped off. Now, you know, Aaron and I, we were goldsmiths. We had our own jewelry business for many years. And it was successful because people felt that we would tell them the truth, that we weren't trying to rip them off. And there are many times I worked for jewelers, I tried to quit, and they just kept giving me more money. No, I trust you. I trust you're not going to steal diamonds, steal gold and jewelry. We live in a world of fear because people don't know what it is to trust. Honest people are rare. And Jesus says, I will tell you the truth. Back up into John 17, Jesus makes another claim. Starting in verse 14, we're going to jump right in the middle of this conversation. In John 17, verse 14, he says, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them. For they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. Once again, not of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of it. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. The Bible makes a claim that this is the truth, that this is something that you can stand on. It's an anchor. It'll bring security to your lives. And the challenging thing is a lot of people claim Christianity, but they don't really hold to it. They don't really read it. And so people have this feeling like it just doesn't work. And he says here, sanctify them by your word. In other words, there's a cleansing that happens when you hold to the teachings. Sanctified means to be made holy. Now he says, hey, the world has hated them. Sometimes people just don't want to hear the truth. And that's like I said before, there's a lot of persecution when you bring the truth up. In fact, like I said, Jesus got killed for it. Key for disciples is you need to embrace it. Why? Because that's people of integrity. That's the difference. Why? Because it cleanses us. It frees us up and makes us holy. Now the question is, do you want to know the truth? Do you want to hear it or not? And there's a lot of people who will not read the Bible because in their minds, if I read it, then I'll know. If I don't read it, I'll have an excuse. I'll claim ignorance. Well, the root word of ignorance is ignore. And that's not acceptable to God. We can ignore what God's trying to tell us. It just doesn't work. If you don't accept the truth, you will never overcome issues in your life. You'll never be truly cleansed. Point number 2, accept and hold to the truth. Let's go to John 8. Guys, getting all this? Am I getting too deep? Come on. John 8, verse 31. Okay, so Jesus has an interaction with the Jews. It says, to the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples, then you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. They answered him, we are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free? Jesus replied, I tell you the truth, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Oh, there's a lot there. Okay, who's he talking to? He's talking to Jews who believed. And Jesus said, belief in me is insufficient. They believed in him. He says, you got to hold to my teachings to really be my followers. All right? Or a Christian. Now that takes things to a whole nother level. Matthew 28 says we are to teach everybody to obey everything. There's a difference between teaching the Bible and teaching people to obey it. If you claim Christianity, you should be doing what Jesus is calling us to do. And like I said, a lot of people claim Christianity have never even read the Bible, let alone obey it. Well, he says if you hold to it, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. All right, so believing in it is not going to set you free. Reading it is not going to set you free. Holding to it will set you free. The question is, are you free? If not, what is it that you're holding on to other than the scriptures? Are you free of guilt? And when they studied the Bible with me, I had so much guilt that I didn't even realize was there. I had hardened my heart so much that I was unaware. Are you anxious, or do you want freedom from anxiety and fear? Are you controlled by what others think and say? Are you controlled by drinking or drugs and sex? You know, the Pharisees said to Jesus, we are Abraham's descendants, have never been slaves of anyone. It's like, how can you even begin to say that? I mean, their whole history is slavery. They were slaves to the Egyptians. They're slaves to the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and now Rome. You are a conquered nation. We've never been slaves. Why? Because the truth is too painful. People do not want to accept the truth. And Jesus saying, hey, and he cuts through it all, anyone who sins is a slave to sin. Come on, bro. And he says, but I can set you free. And that's what really Jesus' desire is, for us to live a life of freedom. There's a freedom on living a lifestyle of truth. And a lot of times, once again, we battle that in our hearts. That's the sanctifying he's talking about, the cleansing. A person of integrity has strong moral character. They hold to God's teaching. Come what may. You're going to get persecuted. You're going to have people have all sorts of issues. Well, we need to care more what God thinks than what everybody else thinks. You know, in verse 12, he says, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness. In other words, they're not living a deceitful life. They're exposing everything. In Psalm 51, verse 6, you don't have to turn there. It's a psalm that David writes after he commits adultery with Bathsheba. He's confronted and he gets broken. And he says, in verse 6, he says, surely you desire truth in the inner parts. Now, he's getting deep there because a lot of times we don't know who we are. We have lied to ourselves so many times that we really can't deal with our hearts because we don't know what our hearts are. We want to put on a show. We don't want to believe a lot of things because it's too painful. It's too ugly. God doesn't want us to see a fake version of you. And neither do I. I want to know you. You want to know me? Here it is. Blah. Love it or leave it. Your decision, but I'm going to walk in the light because there's freedom in that. I don't want to have to perform for every different person that comes into my life. I don't want to be a chameleon. I want to be me. And I want to change me that's ugly. When they studied the Bible with me, they had very hard time getting me to see the truth about my heart because I rationalized it away. I excused it. No, it's my father's fault. Blame shifting. And they're like, you got to own where you're at, buddy. And it was painful, but it was very, very freeing. Did you ever see the movie A Few Good Men? Jack Nicholson, right? Tom Cruise. All right, Tom Cruise is a lawyer. And Jack Nicholson is on the stand. And he's kind of going at it with him. And he says, what do you want from me? He says, I want to know the truth. And Jack Nicholson says, you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. It's a famous line. And that's a lot of us. It's hard to accept. But once you accept it, now you can deal with it. Hold on to the scriptures. Okay, let's look at an example of what I'm talking about. Look in Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. Just one area, okay? Verse 33, Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 5:33. Jesus preaching. And he says, again, you've heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, by the earth, for it is his footstool, by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head. You cannot make even one hair white or black. Simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. You know, in James 5, it says, let your yes be yes and your no, no, or you'll be destroyed. Wow, this is powerful. Why is this such a big deal? Well, Jesus is saying, you know, you're swearing by the temple, you have nothing to do with the temple. You know, I have nothing to do. I swear by heaven. What does that mean? He says, you can't even swear by your own hair. You're not in control. Start losing that stuff. Try to stop it. Doesn't work. What do we do? Starts turning gray. You got to keep working that thing. He says, you're not in control, buddy. Surrender. He says, hey, just do what you say you're going to do. If you can't do it, say I can't do it. A lot of people say, yeah, I'll take care of it, with no intention to do it. But they don't want to look bad at the moment. That's not being a person of integrity. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. Why is it such a big deal? Because it affects other people. If you say you're going to do stuff and you don't, consistently, they just won't trust you anymore. I'm not even going to ask because I don't believe what comes out of your mouth. You say you're going to be on time. I'll be there at so-and-so. Are you on time? Now, there are times when things happen, but if you're habitually late, then you're not a person that we're talking, a person of integrity. Do you return things that you borrow? I have some books out there I need back. Do you pay people back when you borrow money? Contribution. You pledge a certain amount. Do you do it? Or you just kind of blow it off? It's not a big deal. Being people of integrity, you have a standard. Do you start things and not finish them? You know, Victor preached about that at midweek, and I really appreciated that. He says, if you're going to begin strong, you need to finish strong. Let's go look in Proverbs chapter 11. And you thought you were going to get a nice little goodbye and blessing. You're leaving. I'm going to miss you guys. Proverbs 11.
Come on, bro. This is what I was thinking.
Proverbs 11, verse 3. It says the integrity, there's that word, of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. The integrity of the righteous guide them. They know what to do. You just open your Bible. Okay, what would Jesus do? 95% of the time, we know what Jesus would do. Just do that. But then he says they're destroyed by their duplicity. They say one thing and do another. And it will destroy you. Look in Luke chapter 16. Luke 16. Jesus tells a parable in verse 10. It's a parable of the shrewd manager. We're not going to read the whole thing, but in verse 10, he says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. He's saying, hey, what you do with the little shows what you will do all the time. Because it's who you are. It's your character. The question is, are you a trustworthy person? Do people trust you? Does this define you? And he's talking about money in this whole thing. And money brings out a lot of things. People get stingy with money. They want to give their contribution, but okay. And it's hard. It's a struggle. Versus gratitude. How much more can I give? Money does things to our character. When people pass away and there's an inheritance, boy, people change. She's talked about that. We've seen it. There's a book. When Barb and I led the Chicago church, there was a book that we had everybody read, and the book simply was called Integrity. And for staff meetings, what we would do is we'd go through every chapter. And this book was not a Christian book. It was written by a guy who guided CEOs of companies on how to lead and manage their people. And basically the whole idea here, he talked about integrity, was strength of character. Because if you have a bad character, people don't want to work for you. And he's like, okay, what do people feel like when they come to work? Are they scared? Are they frustrated? Or they're excited about the day to come? There's a huge difference here. Now, there's like one scripture in the whole book, but it has all these examples that you can put scriptures to. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. You can attach them to those points. Now, if you're not a leader that leads by integrity, especially in a church, there's a problem. The people will feel like you're a hypocrite. Now, if you have teenagers, you know how they respond to hypocrisy. Man, my dad always used to say, don't do as I do, do as I say. Well, what's that saying? And in the church, hey, it's got to begin with the leadership. Leaders have to be people of integrity. You can't expect people to follow if you're not doing it. Now, in the book, it talks about the example of a boat, okay? And you can tell a lot about a boat by the wake behind it, what it does to the water behind it. You can tell how deep the boat is. You can tell how wide it is. You can tell how fast it's going, all by the wake. And what he says, in the same way, you can tell the impact of the people behind you. How did you influence them? You can look at their lives. And the question is, when you go through somebody's life, are they better for it or worse? That's pretty intense. Jesus had a wake. He changed the world. And he continues to change the world. In the book, he's a little more extreme. He says, okay, your boat goes by and there's a bunch of people out in the water, and are they having a fun time swimming and laughing, or are they all a bunch of dead bodies that you've run over with the what do you call it? Yeah, It's like, oh my gosh. But Jesus left a wake of good. And even though Christianity had been persecuted time and time again, basically it was a call to love. Now, I've studied with a lot of Muslims, and they'll say, yeah, Christianity, you killed a lot of Muslims. And I said, they weren't Christians. And they're like, what do you mean? How can you say they weren't Christians? Because Jesus would not have done that. Don't fall for a lie. Your life can have a huge impact. You can transform the world around you. Some people will hate you, and some will love you. And with Jesus, there was no gray area. They were all in or they weren't. And what you do is you force people to make decisions just by being around them. You're at work, and all of a sudden, oh, I can't swear, Dante's here, I better quit swearing. That's the way it should be. Oh, I can't get this past Jericho, he'll tell the truth. That's the way it should be. Be a person of integrity. I'm going to close with a challenge. I implore you to accept the truth and hold to it. Milwaukee has a lot of people suffering. There are a lot of people in Milwaukee that I don't know. You could change their lives. You could draw them in by showing them the truth. Tuesday, Barb and I leave. All right, we're going to Tbilisi. Our goal is to change Russia. That's not a minor thing. But there's going to be a wake of what we do when we leave. And it'll either be good or it'll be bad. And it's not that I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about what God thinks. Because he's transformed my life and he will transform yours and anybody else that you come in contact with if you decide to do it his way. Hey, we're having to bring your neighbor today. Who's your neighbor? Yeah. Let's pull people in and love them as Jesus has called us to do. With God, his power, and your decision, you can change the world around you. And to God be the glory. Amen.